What's going on, everybody? It is Cross Pod. I'm here with the boys from the Seawall Podcast. We got Matt Cartwright, we got Levon Dunn, and we're rocking it tonight live. A lot of good stuff to talk about. I'm flying solo as a member of the Rugby Rant. Scott is under the weather, and Ty is over in South Africa. I still think he went over there just purely to celebrate a World Cup victory. You know, he'll probably celebrate for the next 4 years. I mean, he and Benji are just ridiculous. They never cease to remind everybody about, South Africa winning the World Cup. Nevertheless, again, I'm here with the Seawall Podcast. Good lot of boys here doing good service out there in the Northwest. Matt, Levon, how are you boys doing?
Thanks for having us on, Rob. I'm doing really good.
Yep. Thanks for having us on. Absolutely. Cheers.
No worries, mates. Listen, I got to ask, Matt, last time we saw each other, you were rocking a Seawolves jersey, just like the one you are rocking now, but you didn't have the eye patch. Tell everybody what's going on. Are you fully embracing, the Captain Ahab thing and going after the big white whale? Or what's going on there?
I'm practicing to play poker. I can't move much of my face, as you can tell in my speech. I am not drunk. Wish I was, but I'm not. So I was over Thanksgiving. I thought I had a stroke, and we end up going to the hospital and going through the ER and all that fun stuff. And I have bilateral Bell's palsy, which means that both sides of my face, I have no movement, and my vision is blurry, so I have to wear a patch and switch it from eye to eye, so that way one eye doesn't get more dominant than the other as I heal. And it's 1 in 5 million that the possibility is to happen. So I'm over here wishing it was more like a lottery ticket win than it was to lose any movement in my face. But over the last month, it's been a month now, and it's been quite an experience, and not in any one that I want to share with anybody or wish upon anybody.
I'm sure not. I mean, and I jest and tease and cajole a little bit, but the honest to God's truth, I think we want people to be more aware at just how much this can impact somebody. It can impact a healthy individual, and just, in a moment's notice. So we need to be aware of our loved ones, and just be cognizant of when they might be experiencing something unusual in their healthcare, and to go get treated right away. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on out there in the Northwest, but Levon, let's just take a couple minutes and tell us about you. You're in the festive Christmas spirit. Yeah, how about that? Yeah. I'm surprised Rucky isn't hiding underneath that hat.
Well, he might as well be. I mean, I'm sure he'll make an appearance at some point in a Santa hat. But so one of the things that what connected me and Matt actually was, it's kind of go back in history a little bit by myself, is that I was a season ticket holder, inaugural season ticket holder with the Seawolves. And then Matt actually ended up sitting in front of me. And we had actually known each other from years past, which was kind of funny. And I kind of was like, "Hey man, don't I know you?" And it turns out our parents were friends with each other.
Yeah, Rucky hanging out with
us.
Yeah,
there's Rucky. Yeah, not quite the Santa hat,
right.
But but yeah, so we kind of got connected on the Seawolves, and he lived out at the Pacific Beach where my dad lives right now, and then we just kind of just stayed in contact, always kind of with new traditions at the Seawolves games, and
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. We'll talk about that another time.
We'll talk about it another time. Yeah. And then I think it was probably about June or sometime in the spring or something like that he had called me one day. He said, "Have you ever thought about doing a podcast for rugby, for the Seawolves and all that stuff?" And I said, it would be really great to do something like that. We don't really have that here in the Northwest, and why don't we be do some trailblazing here? So we kind of just jumped on that, and it's not just about Seawolves. It's not just about MLR. It's about all these community rugby organizations in the Pacific Northwest that we like to interview some people from those teams and everything like that. And rugby is just so unique in that factor. And so it's been great. It's been great to get to know a lot of new people and just in our backyard. And it's incredible. Great people.
To add on to that, he really wasn't around the rugby community.
Yep.
And so his eyes are wide open now that this last weekend, obviously I couldn't go because, I don't need to drink, but he went to a couple of parties and he went to Seattle Rugby and he went to Valley Rugby. So like we have a Valley just like you guys do out in Chicago. And he went to the parties and got to know everybody and sing some songs, which he hadn't sung before. And got to give away some pins for our Seawall podcast to a couple guys and really got to learn some of the culture.
Yeah, it's incredible to see it at that level too, because I just feel like the more you go, the digger you deep. It's just a wealth of just incredible stuff.
Well, I think we all agree, Matt and I've talked about it over the last couple last couple of games we've been at and shared some stories and shared a few beverages, is that we've really, in order to grow this game, in order to grow our fan base for the MLR, we've really got to be the ones also trailblazing and growing the game at the grassroots level, whether it's a youth level or whether it's a club level. It's almost kind of like our responsibility as big fans of the game to keep putting more into the game and keep supporting it. And whether it's plugging it through the Seawall podcast or the Rugby Rant podcast, just really plugging what's going on at the grassroots level so people understand that the beauty about this game in America is the thing that attracted me, because I didn't get into it, as many watchers know, until I was 24 years old, is that, you can start playing at any time, whether it's, playing as a youth player, a young lad or lassie, or, getting into it in high school or college, but you can also get into it and still continue to play, whether it's with the men's club or women's club in your area, and we've got to support them all. I have my own Rucky over my shoulder, courtesy sent to me by Rucky the Seawolf, right? So he's looking down upon us from both sides, both in Chicago as well as on the Pacific Northwest, of course. And God, that ball is something else. Let's get a look at that. I'm going to take myself off screen, show that close up. Give us.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is a ball that Nick and Levon gave me for Christmas. And then I, of course, had to make them both sign it because it's only right with me and my rugby balls and people autographing them.
It's a little hard to see where we signed.
Yeah,
but,
you can't read their signature. They're both
the
studying to be doctors. Yeah, pretty cool, right? Like, what a great gift, and especially for somebody like me that loves, to collect rugby balls.
Yeah, 100%. And I see something else sitting on the table here left, Matt. Why don't you explain that to all the fans out there? Because this trophy is a traveling trophy, if I'm not mistaken. Talk about that.
Yeah, bro. So when we went to NOLA, Rob and his crew gifted this to us. I believe it started in DC by Duma, and it was gifted to Gold Diggers for being the most prevalent group of fans to travel to DC for a game, to an away game. And so the challenge is, so when we went to NOLA, we showed up in force. I think we showed up with like 30 or 40 people. And so we're going to add our name right here. And then in the season, whoever shows up in the most force up here in Seattle, I will gift it to them. And it will be their turn to put their name on it and gift it the next season. Pretty cool tradition. Thanks for letting us be a part of it, Rob.
Well, I wish I could take a big role in it. I can't. It was, Benji and Dan Falcon and Sheila and all my peeps down there in the NO. But the fact that you're carrying on, the fact that you guys want to gift that away to some deserving traveling troubadour of fans is what makes it a lovely gesture. And again, it speaks to the culture that that rugby is and that you try to spread throughout our game and throughout our fan groups. And speaking of fan groups, for those people that don't know, most of the teams have a representative on our kind of a fan group that Matt and myself and some other guys are on. So reach out to your big fan leaders. If they're not a part of it, get us on there, because we like to share information. So when you come into town, you know where to stay, you know what's going on. You're connected with fans that are doing all sorts of activities. Things like tailgating, things like going to games. I know a big group from NOLA went to the Cubs game when they were here, but all that kind of stuff. So get them plugged in. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, because there are 17 people watching live right now, we appreciate you so much on both sides. Check out the Seawall Podcast. They do a lot of great stuff out there talking about not just the Seawolves, but what's going on in the Pacific Northwest with grassroots rugby. We want to recognize that, so Matt had to deal with this bilateral Bell's palsy. So that isn't enough. The dude's been, first of all, he dropped a lot of weight. I mean, Matt dropped a ton of weight. Kudos to him.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
185 pounds.
155 pounds. I mean, that's something special. So then he drops a ton of weight. He's trying to get healthy, and then he gets his bilateral Bell's palsy. And then he gets some horrible news. Last night, a very dear friend of his, a fan of the Seawolves, Ray Bunk, passed away. Kind of some circumstances are still being looked into, but he was dealing with some PTSD, was both a veteran and member of the local police department. So we can't say enough about checking in on your friends, making sure they're okay. Remember, it's okay to not be okay. Support Loose Heads, one of the MLR's organizations that they support in order to promote mental health and mental wellness. Matt, can you just say a word or two about Ray in
Absolutely.
memory of him?
Absolutely. Yeah. Ray and his wife, Angie, has season tickets right next to us. They've had them since the inaugural season. Angie is my dearest friend. I've known her since 4th grade. Ray, Angie, my wife, and I always pal around and do things together. Last night, he was wanting to go fishing late at night. He was feeling alone, as many people go through, and he was fighting the battle of depression. And anyways, he went out on a boat and stayed out while it was dark. He wasn't reporting back to his wife. We had the PD go out there. We started looking for him. The PD started looking for him. We got a boat out on the water, and unfortunately, he didn't make it. And so I lost a very good friend last night. But my buddy Angie lost her best friend, and that's who I worry about.
All right, so all those fans out there in the Seawolves, make sure you take Angie out. Make sure you make sure she gets to the games and has an opportunity to enjoy the game that we all enjoy, and check in on her if you know her, because again, mental health and mental wellness is important. And remember, if you're struggling, don't hesitate to let somebody know. Don't hesitate to say, I need some help, because there's a whole family of people around all of us that are willing to help. The rugby community is strong, and that's what makes it great. So thank you for that, Matt, Levon. We appreciate it. My condolences to Angie. My condolences to you, Matt. Lost a dear friend, a veteran, and a member of the Blue. So let's move forward. I think what everybody is waiting to hear is some of our thoughts on what's happening in the league right now. And of course, today, which is why we're going live today in part, today we got the news that all of us have been waiting for, and that is the schedule drop. That's right. We finally have the schedule. Obviously, it was delayed because Toronto and New York ceased to exist as we know them, or as we knew them. So I think they had the schedule ready to go a few weeks back, but then they obviously had to change. But we finally got the schedule released. So we're going to talk about that here in a moment. pick your brains, get your guys' thoughts, not only in general about the schedule across the MLR, but also about the Sea Wolves themselves. I'll talk a little bit about the two teams that I rep. And yes, I'm a bit bipolar in my fandom, so I apologize. But no, I'm not going to apologize. Hell with it. I'm not apologizing for nothing. I'm a fan of both teams. Damn it. Nevertheless,
and you should be, bro. Those are two great teams.
Yeah, it's hard. There's people that I love dearly on both sides, so it's hard to root against either of them. So I'll root for them both. Nevertheless, so we'll talk about the schedule, and then we're going to get into the off season across the league. And the big question here is, as we look in the off season, how would we grade the MLR in terms of handling the off season business? Obviously, the news out of Toronto, the news out of New York, out of the league's control. Not much they can do about that. I think what we're more looking at is how the league is responding and dealing with these situations. It seems like every fall, at least for the last couple of years, they've had a crisis. So you would think that the league would get very good at handling crisis and crisis management. And it's more or less, I want to talk to you guys and pick your brains about your thoughts regarding the league's handling of the offseason business. So let's start first with the schedule release. Came down at 2 Central, 12 your time. So here's the question first, and I want to hear from both of you guys, both Matt and Levon. I'll go to Levon first. For you, what are three things that you love about the schedule?
Three things I love. Well, first off, I love that we get San Diego on our first week. I think that's fantastic to open up the season like that against a good old rival, derby match. Love it. And that will be those early season games. I think are just so much fun. I mean, they're all fun, but just under the lights, cold. Starfire gets heated up for games like that. So I'm just so excited about that. But moving off a little bit with the from the Seawolves, I think that the Miami Chicago, I believe that was week 1 as well. I'm particularly interested in that because, first off, Miami's the newcomers of the league, and I think that will be really fantastic to see their inaugural match and seeing how that team comes together, how that club comes together, and against a burgeoning club itself, Chicago. So I think that will be really interesting to see. And then Seattle versus Dallas. When Dallas comes and visits here, we have some guys that we actually interviewed was Noah Wright and Marcus. I'm kind of blanking on the last name, but two guys that we actually interviewed on our show, and they're Dallas players, and they're going to be coming up for a visit, and I think that'll be really cool to see them in there. Yeah,
element. See them go from grassroots to pro, right?
Yeah,
super cool, man.
That's awesome. So I like the fact that you're already playing up that San Diego rivalry, right? I think one of the features that a lot of the fans talk about on Reddit, in our fan leaders group, is what are the derbies, right? What are those matches that we look forward to, regardless of if you're a fan of either side? Which one do you sit back and go, you know what, I'm going to make it a point to watch this game this weekend because it's going to be a screamer, right? You're going to get a good matchup, and I no doubt think that San Diego. I agree, Levon. I think that San Diego and Seattle is you're always going to get a quality matchup there between those two squads. There's just it's a friendly rivalry, but it's a grinder, man. It's one of those ones that that they're going to try to punch each other in the mouth for 80 minutes, and you're going to get a quality matchup there. So I'm interested, Matt. Now let's hear from you. You can't take anything that Levon said, right? You got to come up with your own goodies. So what do you like? What are 3 games? What are 3 things about the schedule? Go with what you roll with. What are you thinking here?
I'm going to go on a selfish note. So I'm excited to go to Miami. All right. So my wife and I, my queen, as I call her, we're going to go to 6 out of the 8. Let's see. Yeah, 6 out of the 8 away games. I'm not going to go see Dallas. If they could start winning games, I'd be happy. And then I'm not going to go to LA because I haven't heard any hype. I really don't care. Unfortunately, I mean, sorry, Jordan. I'll be rooting for you every time you kick, bro. But so I'm excited to travel. So that's what I'm taking away from the schedule. Next up, I'm going to Miami for the first time ever. We're going to go to the Keys. Excited about that. And then lastly, I'm excited to see what happens for the finals. I'm excited to see who wins what. So, with the schedule comes the playoffs, and I'm excited to see who makes it this year because there's been so many changes on everybody's roster. And then we got to wait for them all to start clicking and getting into the vibe and reading each other as well as the defense or offense and see what happens. I'm super excited about that, bro. Are you going to the championship this year?
Well, how about this? Let's put that one off for a little bit. We'll talk about that. Okay. Yeah. So we'll get to that one. I want to talk about 3 things that I like about the schedule that I look forward to, and then we'll talk a little bit about if we have any concerns. There was a great question put up by let's see, I wonder who it was. Somebody had Bayou Rugby down there in NOLA that wants to talk about LA. We can hit upon that a little bit. We'll get into it. And then we'll talk about the final and move on to some other business. So first of all, my hot takes. So I got 3 things about the schedule that are interesting. First of all, one of the things I like about it is starting in week 4, we have a Friday night matchup. And so what we're getting is a Friday night game. We're getting a number of Saturday games, and we're getting a Sunday game. And what I love about that is that I can sit there and watch 3 days in a row. I can get a quality matchup and look forward to watching some rugby, relaxing on the couch or, at the watch party, whatever. And I can get some quality rugby and watch 3 games in a row, 1 each day, and then catch up on the other ones later on, either through replay or watching a game during the week. So that's one thing I like. And we get a number of those. The first one starts at week 4. Take a look at that one. That one, I believe, looks like, let me go back. That one is, I think, is Seattle and LA, if I'm not mistaken, on the 22nd of March. Okay, and then it ends on the 24th with a San Diego at Chicago. And, of course, I'll be pitch side for that, so I'm super, super excited about that one. That one's going to be good. The other one thing that I'm interested in, and, it speaks to Matt's point, I get a little bit selfish here, is the fact that Chicago does not have 5 home games in a row in the middle of March in Chicago. I got a feel last year for what Toronto went through when they had to try to get 8 home games and fill the stadium with fans. 8 home games in a row. It can be kind of difficult for people to take a Saturday and Sunday of rugby 8 weeks in a row. And it was tough in those 5 weeks, especially when we had that snowball when Toronto came to town. So that's one thing I like. Another thing that I like is that Chicago is getting to play in New Orleans. Last year, New Orleans came up to Chicago. This year, I get to go down to NOLA and watch both teams play. I've already kind of marked it, put it on my calendar, and even better yet, I'm a teacher. I'm going to be out of school on the 22nd of June. So, God grace me with an awesome date there, because if my wife and I want to drive and enjoy a drive a couple days before, we can do that if we want to fly. But nevertheless, we get to go down to New Orleans, and I don't have any hurry to get back up north. Although it's going to be hotter than balls, I must say that. So those are 3 things that I'm looking for. There are a couple things that, as I looked at the schedule, a little bit of a concern, but I want to ask you guys, as you looked across the schedule, was there anything that kind of gave you a moment of pause? Now, I want to, before I hand the mic over, I'm going to go with Matt first. Before I hand the mic over, I want everybody who's watching at home to understand you're not going to make everybody happy with the schedule. There are going to be winners and losers all the time. You got to take the good with the bad. But I'm just asking, as fans, for you guys personally, what are some things that gave you a moment of pause or a moment of concern, if they did at all? So, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you first, my friend.
Yeah, I immediately, looking at the schedule for the league, I'm looking at week 2, and week 2 has Dallas against Miami. And I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen with these guys. We're hoping for the best, and we're hoping for a great game, but we have no idea, do we? I think the other one that would be a good one would be week 7, when it's going to be San Diego and Free Jacks challenging each other, because I'm not seeing it prior to that. So it'd be fun to see the rematch of the championship of last year and see what they bring. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, man.
Okay, 100%. So, Levon, nothing else. All right, Levon, what do you got?
So one thing that's really concerning to me is that I'm going to be in Barcelona and Italy for some of these at the end of the season. So, in all seriousness, I think it would be, a week 1 matchup with kind of like what Matt was speaking of, what Matt was saying, like seeing the rematch between the two in the final on the first week would be really cool. But I guess what's concerning is, in a Seawall's perspective, is to play the Warriors away last week of the season. That's something that kind of jumps out to me.
In Salt Lake.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you talk about that one, because let's just look for a moment at weeks 17 and 18, because we're going to be talking about the playoff structure. But here's what we know is we know at the end of the season, the last 2 to 3 weeks, a couple of years back, the league in its infinite wisdom, and I think they did a nice job, kind of pitted some of those rivalries against one another that really turned out to make a difference in the playoffs. So you had teams that were on the bubble competing against one another for an opportunity to make it into the playoffs. And I know it's particularly sensitive to this because Nola was bumped out by Rooney as a result of a match between the two. So, look at week 17. You have Nola against the Hounds, the Sharks versus the Free Jacks, Seattle versus LA, Utah, Dallas, and San Diego, Houston. I mean, there's some really good matchups in week 17. And then in week 18, you got Nola and OG, you got the Free Jacks and the Hounds, you got Houston and LA, Utah and Seattle, the one you guys were talking about, and then Dallas and San Diego. I mean, you got some screamers there. What do you guys thoughts in those last 2 weeks? I mean, which games do you guys in those last 2 weeks could be playoff type games?
I want to say June 29th with Chicago versus Free Jacks. Mm-hmm. I mean, we know what Sam Harris did with AG with 2 years. Okay, so what's he going to do with Chicago Hounds? I mean, they won 2 in their first, season, more than Dallas. And then we got the Free Jacks, which are, I mean, they're great. They've been great every year so far. So I wonder if that'll end up being a contending game, but it's so far away. We have zero clue, right? In all sincerity. I don't think anyone else is going to match up to that game. I think that'll be the game of the week.
Yeah.
What do you think?
June 23rd, San Diego, Houston. Could never count out those two from being towards the top. I mean, we saw it last year, right? Excuse me. And
Houston
how that
San
came.
Diego's always in the Western Conference.
Yeah, I know, and that's definitely shifted around now
in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, yeah. But now that we're in a different structure, that's going to be even those. It's going to come. It's going to be in the balance much more. I think this time around. those San Diego versus Houston. And you're right. Those are the ones that, in Seawall's perspective is ones that we're always going to have an eye on, especially a 4:00 Eastern game, 1:00 our time. Mm-hmm. And then we play LA earlier that day or later on that day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's going to be a game to watch in the week 17 is that San Diego Houston game. And I think I actually think the OG NOLA game in the week 18 will be one to watch as well. It seems like those two have fought tooth and nail over the last 2 seasons. And they always seem to be teams that are really trying to break into that playoff bubble over the last couple of seasons. And they just have fallen just a little bit short. Although I think if OG did, I think they got into the playoffs last year just barely. So, there's an opportunity there for one of those 2 teams to get into the playoffs, and NOLA's been thirsty for it for 4 years running now. So it'll be interesting to see how that game bodes. But we've got a lot of comments here. I love seeing Rick Meyer on there, Marcus Holt talking about Houston and San Diego there. It's a good matchup. I want to turn our attention towards the playoffs because people may or may not realize the playoff structure is different. I want to get your take on this. So let me describe for everybody. We're abandoning and going back to the first 2 seasons when the Seawolves won the MLR Shield. And there was no divisions. There was no conferences. It was simply straight table, right? As tradition with like the Prem, for example. And it has been traditionally, 4 teams make the playoffs. You have a semifinal match. You have a final matchup. And it's basically 2 weeks worth of playoffs. This year, they're expanding the playoffs for 3 weeks for people that don't know. And basically 8 teams out of the 11 are going to make the playoffs. And so you're going to have quarterfinals, you're going to have semifinals, and you're going to have finals. So here's what I want to know, gents. What do you guys think about this playoff structure? Do you like it or not like it? So I'm going to start with Levon first. Give me your take.
I like it. I do. I think that's I do like the straight up table. I think that there's more to play for in that sense. So it's not based on geographical region. I think that's fantastic, honestly, and it's very uniformed in that sense as well. And then the teams play 6 opponents twice, home and away, just like other places, other leagues in the world and everything like that. So, and top 8 teams qualify for the championship series. So, I do like that format, to tell you the truth. I know that in American sports, everything is conference, division, and stuff like that. But I think that this format actually has more competition to it, to tell you, honestly. So that's where I stand with that.
I'm curious to see how it plays out. Yeah. I'm curious to see how it plays out, bro. Because we got 8 teams that are going to make playoffs, so people are going to talk smack about that, right? I mean, they're like, oh, too many people are going to the playoffs. So they didn't even have to try. Yeah. BS, but whatever. You got 2 brand new teams coming in, and it'll give them a reason to fight. That's for sure, because they can get in at that low point. And then I liked the divisions. I liked West Coast, East Coast personally, but I'm curious to see how this plays out. I mean, the first 2 years worked out in our favor, so I'm not going to complain. And our team is stacked this year, so I'm really curious to see if we do a 3-peat. That would be pretty cool in my mind, but I'm biased.
Well, that would mean that they have to win 3 years in a row. So come on, pull back on those reins. But nevertheless, 2 takes here. 2 hot takes. First of all, I think that having no conferences, in spite of the fact that I liked having the home and away series, in the East and a home and away in the West, and then being able to have, either at home or away against teams in the other conference. I liked it. But I think that having all the teams in the playoff in the same kind of playoff fight will make every battle against every team more important. I would kind of earmark the last couple seasons, those Eastern Conference teams when they match up against NOLA. I was really watching those, New York and OG, because you're obviously battling for supremacy on that side of the conference. Now, every matchup is a battle because you're competing against every team in the table. So I think that should make some of those matchups interesting, especially as we start to get into the thick of the season. I would have done playoffs a little differently. Here would have been my proposal, because what Matt said was interesting. There are some chirps out there that say, look, by having 8, of the 11 make the playoffs, you're leaving 3 teams out. It's kind of watered down the playoffs. And I get that. I see that. For me, taking that into account, here's what I would have done. I would have done the top 2 teams in the table at the end of the season. They get buys in that first week. So I love the fact that we're getting 3 weeks of playoff rugby, right? Who can complain about that if they do, beat them with a wet noodle because they deserve to be slapped upside the head? I like those 3 weeks in a row, but I would probably have done 2 teams. They're on the tops of the table. They get a bye that first week. And then your 3-4, your 3 plays 6, your 5 and 4 play each other. And then you could actually reorganize. Your highest seed goes against your number 2 seed. Your second highest seed that wins that pigtail match, so to speak, plays against the number 1 seed. Now, the only problem with that is, well, I suppose it wouldn't really be a problem because, unless you suspect teams are going to have some folks travel. But I mean, that only puts off that travel 1 more week. Nevertheless, that's probably what I would have done to kind of meet in the middle between watering down the league and the playoff structure and, allowing for more rugby, more playoff weekends. So that's my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. And ain't worth a shiny dime.
It's going to be a longer season than we've had in the past. So that'll be fun.
Yeah.
For sure.
And
So
2 weeks later, going to.
Yeah, and so let's talk about this. We know that the final is going to be played in San Diego. Rays Rugby released that this week. What do you guys think about that one?
Man, I don't want to go to San Diego. That'll be like this. We go to San Diego all the time. I want to go to Chicago. I had a lot of fun last year. I think San Diego will be great. All joking aside, it's a beautiful venue. Snapdragon is gorgeous. Ryan, Patterson. He is that the right name? Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. He's got a heart. And he is passionate about rugby, and I love that he stuck his neck out like Chicago did last year. And they're hosting. I mean, we couldn't host in Seattle. No way in hell. Wish we could, but we can't. And with San Diego, it's going to be gorgeous. So we got good weather, no matter what. It won't be balls hot like it would in Texas or New Orleans. So it should be a great time. I mean, hey, every time I go somewhere, I have a good time. I had a good time drinking a beer in a mud puddle. So there's that.
And I'm just looking forward to going to San Diego for my first time ever. Actually, I've never been to San Diego. I know, believe it or not.
Stuff.
So we're going to be that's going to be quite an experience to go there for the first time and experience that. And my first MLR final that will be too. I think that I like that it's in a neutral venue. I just always like that. I think it's great it's almost like an all-star game, so to speak. Everybody comes together from around the country or even around the world. Right. And it's just about celebrating rugby in the end. And so I think that's kind of like what I've seen with with Matt going to Chicago, and everybody gets to party with the Dropkick Murphys. And I think that's what I'm really looking forward to with that.
Sorry, I wasn't laughing at his comment. I was laughing at Jasmine's sarcastic comment that she put in, like 8 teams in the playoffs is like giving participation trophies.
That's
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm waiting for the feedback. I think this will be the last time we ever do 8 people in the playoffs. I do know that. I think it'll get so frowned upon that they won't do it again. But it's going to be a hell of a good playoff season because those guys that are just starting to click towards the end of that season are going to grab a gear and kick some ass.
Yeah, without question, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think you're right. San Diego in August, the weather is going to be pretty predictable, unlike in some other parts of the country where it could be straight up balls hot or rainy or whatnot. So good option there. It gives people plenty of time to plan. It's one of those things that the league has done well. Let's get to that second question, and perhaps we can roll one of the comments made earlier. And I'm trying to find who made the comment. I'll see if I can locate it. Maybe it was a Facebook user talking about the elephant in the room of what's going on with LA. So let's roll kind of that topic into our last big question for the evening on this live broadcast across pod between the Seawall Podcast and the Rugby Rant Podcast. So let's give the MLR a grade, right? A lot happened in this offseason, and we don't need to rehash that, or I'm not going to rehash that. I'll let you guys pick, some things to address that happened in the offseason. But I'm more interested in getting your perspective on how you would grade the MLR's handling of all that happened in the offseason. As I said at the opening of the pod, at least some point in the open, the MLR has always had to deal with something interesting, right? Some kind of a crisis has always happened, whether it's, Gillygate last year, whether it's the, New York and Toronto exiting this year, whether it's, a pandemic, whether it's even, we talked last year and it's still on the table is unionization. I mean, there's all these things bubbling to the surface. Give the league a grade on how they've handled this. And I'm curious where you guys go, and you can throw in, dealing with 2 new teams and where LA is at. And we have yet, even though we have a schedule, we've yet to get any other information on LA. So I'm going to go to Levon first, and then to Matt.
So, yeah, I'm going to preface a little bit here with my grade. First off, at least for here on this Seawall Podcast, our hearts go out to New York and the Toronto rugby communities for their loss of their teams. So first off on that, we feel you on that.
Right.
Yeah. Second part is, MLR, as you said, that's overcome a lot of adversity, especially going through the pandemic and everything like that. And all these certain factors. And some people always tell me like, oh, that league's not going to last. That league's not going to last. But here we are. And I think that with each one of these adversities, it does make things stronger. And our community stronger as well. But in terms of how this whole thing played out with these teams disbanding, and the communication that was given to us, I think that it just, to me, it was a little bit late. But I know there's things that are probably behind the scenes when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, you started to see like on Reddit or on Facebook or Instagram, whatever, is any social media that you see out there, these kind of things stirring up and these theories turning up and everything like that. And it I think split people a little bit with things. So I would have to say, I'd say B. If we're going to say it like that, because I think that it was great for them to encourage the clubs to give a statement and say that we're here, we're still in this community, we're not going anywhere. You saw the Seawolves do that, Houston, Utah, I'm sure they're Chicago. I think that was brilliant on their part to do that, because if that's just coming from the MLR, it's just it doesn't really come across the same, I think. And then that kind of just gets people in this mode of like, what are they trying to tell us? That sort of thing. So I think if it comes from the clubs itself in our communities, I think that was the right move. But I think that it should have happened a little bit sooner.
I'm going to go next. And by the way, I want to give a shout out to our guys, Big Shots, Snapshots. They help edit our stuff. Great guys down in Houston. They do our graphics and did our intro and stuff. They did a really great job. So my grade on how they handled it. I'm going to go into, before I give my grade, I'm going to explain myself. It's a startup business. Okay. Startup businesses are going to fail. That's the closest way you get to success is you got to have a little failure. You got to fall on your face. You got to learn from the problem. You got to grow and move on. Too many people are constantly pointing out the negatives and then they don't have any solutions. I was taught as a child, and I enforce it on when I manage, is if you have a problem, you need to come up with 2 solutions when you present the problem, because anybody can point out the problem. So I am not a multimillionaire that is invested in rugby. I am just an observer that loves rugby. So I think they did it gracefully. I think they did it as gracefully as possible. I don't think they wanted those guys to fail. Who would want them to fail? I mean, nobody. I mean, maybe Free Jacks, but whatever. But they are doing their very best. You know, we had somebody pass away. What are you going to do? I mean, the kids don't want to pick up the ball and run the team, and you can't blame them. You can't force passion on anybody. And then with Atlanta, you know, it was kind of the same thing from what I understood. They didn't want to carry on. They have a great fan base. I think they should have kept it there, in my personal opinion. But again, I'm not paying the bill. So who am I? Moving to LA, I think LA could have done a better job on promoting. But, you know, they're trying to, like Chicago last year, trying to come out the gate. They got a lot on their plate, a lot of stuff that you and I have no idea about the level of commitment and the responsibilities that need to be fulfilled, other than what the fans think is important. Like, you know, what player are we getting this week and who we sign and all that. That's important. Of course, you can't have a team without it, but it's not everything. You know, there's such a business. There's advertising, there's fields, there's practice, there's accommodations for housing. There's so much more for it that most fans don't think about or not even aware of, or it just slips their mind, whatever. So I think all the whining and crying, everybody needs to, you know, step back, catch their breath, and realize their opinion's like an asshole, and we all got one. They all stink. So there's that. But I will give them a B as well. But I'm more on the fact that I support the MLR and what they're doing, because it is a startup company. It's going to have a couple failures. Hey, 2 teams dropped out. You know, 9 stuck around. 2 more are coming back. It's a win-win. We're just moving stuff around. They lost. So what? Hey, look, we might have Mexico come in next year. Yeah. That was cool to watch. You know, something in St. Louis or something would be pretty cool, because the Midwest is like strong like Donkey Kong when it comes to rugby. So, you know, and maybe Vancouver, that'd be pretty cool.
Portland.
But there's so many other opportunities ahead of us. We just got to show stability. And I think that's what they're doing. They're showing stability. I like that Houston came out and was very transparent, and they probably gave up a little bit of information they weren't supposed to calm their fans. But in their defense, they had a president last year for the last 2 years. His name was JT. I'll leave it at that. And JT was not rugby quality. Okay. Hey, look at that. The sign's up above us. Speaking of Sabercats. And JT wasn't ready for the rugby culture and the kindness and respect that we give each other, because he didn't have any. So I'm glad that they moved their staff around, and then they pleased their fans with over-explaining where their stand was, showed transparency to calm everybody down. Couldn't say enough good about it. And I know, Rob, you pointed that out too. you had a lot of good things to say about Houston coming out and being transparent and helping everybody understand why they're doing what they're doing and what's to come.
Yeah. So let me back up the truck. I'll give you my take for everybody. Probably nobody cares, but I'm going to give it anyway. First of all, Matt, let's just say if St. Louis came in at any time, and I'm not saying that they will, but I can't be split three ways. I would struggle mightily being a fan of three teams because I spent a lot of time in St. Louis, and I have I have family there, so I can't do that. It would I'd have a nervous breakdown every weekend. But nevertheless, that being said, look, I would give the league a C. Now, I'm going to preface this and say, I hope everybody understands. I love this league. I love what it does. This is the greatest opportunity for professional rugby. If you look at the Eagles, we're seeing more guys get an opportunity to play professional rugby, to make careers out of it by playing in a proper league. If you go back to when I was playing, Dan Lyle, maybe Haji were the only couple guys that were playing professionally. All the rest of the guys were like my boy Fee, who were playing here domestically in the United States. So the bar is being raised by the MLR. I see it as kind of like that, kind of like one of your children. You love them, you love them, but sometimes they drive you freaking crazy, and you want to see them to do it just a little bit better. And this is, I think there are two concerns that I have. I'll classify them this way. I think the league has a discipline issue. That's number one. And number two, they have a communication issue. So I agree with Matt. Whenever you have a startup company, and the MLR and its teams are startup companies, there's going to be pitfalls. They're going to make mistakes. I get it. And that's very, very true. And this is no different. My trouble is that they seem to have the same problems time in and time out. So with regard to discipline, teams, and I'm told by an insider that all the stuff that was in that Houston communication, none of that stuff was supposed to be public. And so one of my queries is, why does that continue to happen? Things get released. You get, Rays Rugby comes out with information about the final before the league announces it. That's another one. You get, I think Rays Rugby released that New York was no longer going to be in 2024 competition. That was another one. Why are those coming out and being leaked to certain organizations, certain agencies, and why isn't the league on the cusp of making those announcements, right? And then giving an opportunity for teams to follow up and follow suit. I love Houston's message. I think it was spot on. I just wish some of that stuff, like the Gilbert ball, like the tracking, like the head of Irish referees is going to contribute to the referee structure. I wish those things would have been done by the league. I love what Houston did in making that commitment to the NCR, into the CRAA, and supporting collegiate rugby, supporting grassroots rugby. That instilled a lot of confidence for me as a fan. I just wish some of that information would have been released by the league. Another example, Seattle released some of its training kit, right? Why wasn't that done by all the teams at the same time, so that it was consistent? Those are some of the things I'd like to see improve. And again, I think that's a discipline issue, and that leads to communication. We haven't heard much from LA. From what we hear, they have selected a stadium. I forgot where I heard it was going to be. Somebody probably out there making comments will throw it up there, I'm sure. But I think it's where the MLS team plays, if I'm not mistaken, at the same area. So anyway, I guess my concern is, why didn't the league say to the LA organization, look, we understand that it's going to take a bit of an effort to figure out where you're going to play, but we need a logo, we need some branding, we need some color schemes, we need certain things by such and such date, and then hold them to that. That would go a long way, I think, to quelling some of fans' concerns and giving us a bit more confidence in where the league is headed.
Absolutely. So that's actually a question that I'll actually turn back around on you is why do you think that there is this communication lapse or disconnect with the fans and stuff like that? Like what do you think happens in that sort of decision process?
I think it's just because they don't have the staff that's needed to do things like that. I mean, I'm going to be honest, they're a professional league, and I think sometimes their expectations is that we set a standard of like the NFL or the NBA, and I'm probably one of those people that maybe has the standards that are up there with two of these huge leagues that are, they're making billions and making billions of dollars. Teams are, Mark Cuban sold a share for $3 billion in the Mavericks, right? So, we hold them to a certain expectation, but I think that's why they just don't have the staff to make that happen, or they don't have the willingness to hold teams accountable when they break those rules, whether it's fines or whatever have you. They don't hold teams' feet to the fire. And so if, it's the dean in me, right? If you have rules, you got to have consequences for breaking the rules. And if you, but don't get mad, don't get upset when teams break the rules if you're not willing to hold them accountable.
Agreed, bro. Well said.
So, yeah, I'd be interested in getting some feedback there. We got Jasmine. I like her. She agrees with me. But yeah, and thanks to Punkus. I know he's one of your big supporters out there. In Seattle, doing good things. But nevertheless, I think we need to turn our attention towards 2024. A lot of good things are going to happen. Matt, you mentioned earlier, there's been some announcements about Mexico coming in 2025. That's awesome. So things are looking up. I think we're an impatient lot, as fans. And that's a good thing because we keep the energy going. We do things like this to keep people's interest and to hold people's attention until the next season runs around. But we also go to the games and travel, across the country. I know Matt does certainly a lot more than I do. And that's what makes the league fun. And that's what makes being a fan fun. I know my guy down there, Dan Falcon, is excited to have some folks come down to the NO from Seattle and from Chicago. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make that happen myself. I don't know about you guys. Any plans to travel aside from Miami, Matt and Levon?
Yeah, where are you going to go, Levon?
Yeah, I'd love to go to. I love NOLA. That's a fun town. So I would love to come to New Orleans. Honestly, what was that? What is
Matter
that?
of fact, I talked to Dan earlier today too, Rob.
Amazing.
And yeah, we're going to go down there, and I'm going to try and get him to take me to a local club rugby and the whole go. Man, that'll be a great time. Yeah, and then I expect other people. I got a couple of people coming in from town. We got San Diego fans coming to town. Jasmine is going to come for a couple games now that her team of New York is, crapped the sheets and all that fun stuff. I think it'll be great that the camaraderie of all the fans and all the teams, we're slowly all just getting closer and closer. And, man, we're blowing this thing up, brother. It's a great time. Thank you for hosting us, by the way.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Sorry, guys. I'm out of practice. A couple of questions were thrown out there that I wanted to address. Derek asking thoughts on the recent signing of Nate Alexberger. Well, dude, I love it. I mean, we got three great wings here in Chicago. You got O'Keefe, you got Julian Dominguez, and you got Nate the Great. Gotta love that. I mean, I was talking to one of the guys who's a minority owner and who does all the visas, Ian Wegreich, my boy Ian. We were communicating back and forth, and I'm like looking through the back line of the Hounds, and you got starting at 8, you got Luke White, U.S. Eagle. You have McCarthy, Number 9 U.S. Eagle, you got Cardi. 10 U.S. Eagle, you got Luke Campbell. He's a 13. You got Billy Meeks, who's Australian 7s international. Then on the wing, you got Julian, who played Argentinian 7s. On the other side, you had Nate the Great. You have, like I said, Mark O'Keefe. You have Dave Carney, who had about 8 caps for Ireland, who could probably slot in at fullback or pretty much anywhere in the back line. I mean, whew, that is going to be a tough back line to contend with. I'm looking forward to it. So that's a big one. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it. It's been fun to pick your guys' brains. We're gonna have to do this a little bit more frequently. But I'm looking forward to it. I see somebody's corrected me, and I know O'Keefe is a center, but he played out on the wing in and probably the latter half of the Chicago Hound season until he was injured. So it'll be interesting to see how that back line forms throughout the season. So, yep. Hey man, it's been great. I'm looking forward to it. You guys are welcome always in Chicago, and can't wait to have you. And safe travels.
Absolutely. Yeah, we will be there, bro. I'll be to Chicago and all those. Yeah, that'll be a blast, man. That's what I save all my money for, is to travel and go see fans in their world and invite them over to mine. And so, the big dog fans, who we are. And you guys know mi casa, su casa. So get out here. There's no excuse. Hit me up. We'll figure it out. I know I harass Dan all the time. I harass you. I'm going to harass you all until you guys fold eventually. We're excited to go to Houston and see our guys that help us.
Big shot snapshots.
We'll get to hang out with our boys.
Yep.
And they've changed some things around with the media there, so that'll be interesting as the year progresses. Chicago's a blast. That's always a good time. NOLA will be a blast. San Diego, of course. I mean, as much of a rivalry as we have with San Diego, their fans are the ish. And then on one of the off weeks, because we don't go to New England, I see you, Mark. I see you, bro. I'm addressing that. And we will be going to Quincy to watch a Free Jacks game, even though Seattle will not be playing there. I like to try and do that once or twice a year, go to a game that I have no dog in the fight and see how the culture is without our presence. And Quincy reps. Quincy does a great job. I mean, they're not Starfire, where opponents' dreams come to die. But enjoy yourselves.
Theater of Nightmares.
Theater of Nightmares. We're going to run with that one. I like that.
Well, I guess their section, their big fan section, is sold out. So that's good news for them, most certainly. I'm looking forward, to the fact that the Hounds play in OGDC. My brother lives in DC, so that might be another one of my away trips. Because again, it's right there. I think June 1st or June 2nd that weekend, I'll be out of school. So I'll be able to make my way down there, kind of kill two birds with one stone, see my bro, and go to a rugby match and watch the Hounds play down there.
That's awesome, bro. Anything to rugby and family, winning.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, gents, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. It's always good to crosstalk with you guys. And Matt, I hope you're feeling better and you get better as we get closer to the season. And then you'll be able to take up and hoist a beer again. When we hook back up, whether it's in Chicago or wherever. And Levon, I look forward to meeting you in person, my brother. We'll have to do this one more time. Any shout outs on your boys' behalf before we exit for this evening?
Nick, we wish you were here, buddy.
That's exactly who I was going to go with, Nick.
Yeah, he had a family engagement tonight, which family first, and we respect him very much for making that disciplined decision. And, we had a good time, and maybe next time one of us will step out and Nick can have it, and then he can hang out with his arch nemesis here.
With a Santa hat on.
Yeah, with a Santa hat on. Maybe they can talk to each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You and your boys. You and the guys, man, you guys have been so accommodating. I'm sorry that the other two hooligans couldn't make it because I'd like to give them a bad time as well. But, it's been fun to meet all you guys at traveling, and I met each one of you individually. Great group. I mean, the three of you guys finding each other and doing a podcast and doing so well with it is absolutely awesome to witness, because what I learned recently is how much of a job it is to do these podcasts, and how, you just don't get many pats on the back. So, bro, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I know what you go through to do this, and I can only imagine the headaches that you're going through just to do this right now.
The headaches are worth it. It's been a lot of fun. And, I never did answer your question about the final. It's one of the things we are hoping to do as a podcast is be able to, we've never gotten together yet. We've never been in the same place at one time. I've met with Ty. He came into town. I met with Scott. He came into town. But we have never, all three of us, been in the same place. It's one of our goals is to meet possibly in San Diego on August. I think it's going to be like August 3rd or 4th is the date. So we're kind of marking it down, and we're looking forward to maybe getting together for that first time at the final. But until then, I want to thank everybody who's watched, taken time out of their evening to check us out, to check out this cross pod. Thank you for indulging in hearing us ramble on for the last hour and 6 minutes. We appreciate it. We hope you got something out of it. We certainly did, and we will be doing it again. Real quick, when are you guys going to be doing a podcast next so people know when to check you out?
We are doing one after the new year. We're doing it. We're interviewing Alex Glover, who got taken from us in Seattle down to Miami. So it's going to be like kind of a going away party in a sense. Should be a great time. That'll be the next one. We're revamping some of our old stuff because of my situation and my lack of being able to put a whole sentence together very well.
And we have some stuff available right now as well, so go check that out. I mean, we had we remastered Kevin Flynn episodes. He's the president of Seattle Rugby Club. And we recently had our most recent one was Samu Manoa,
right?
Our most recent interview.
And then we also redid our Lance with
Great American Rugby.
American Rugby.
We should ask that question. Shouldn't
you know
we?
what? Can we keep going a little bit? We want to do our Great American Rugby thing where we thank somebody that helped us get to where we're at in our rugby life. And we're going to let you go first, buddy.
You're going to let me go first? Boy, without being prompted and given this ahead of time, I'm having trouble. I don't have a cheat sheet. I think there would be two answers to that. I'd like to throw a shout out to Roanne Rebenson. I wouldn't be involved in rugby without Roanne. She was the mother of a student of mine. I was teaching my first year, and she challenged me, said, flag football's for pussies. Go out there and play rugby. So I did, and it's been in my blood ever since. So that's one person. I think the other person I would like to thank, actually two people, are Ty and Scott. This came together on a whim, on a lark, because of an argument between Scott and I that was friendly, but it was banter, and we thought this would be a great show. And we pushed and cajoled and shoved and argued and pat each other on the back, done all those things. But at the end of the day, consistently for the last almost 4 seasons, we've managed to stay together and at least provide some kind of service to the rugby community. We hope everybody's enjoyed it. And then, all my friends that I've made, I can't thank you enough. You guys know who I'm talking about. Friends here, friends in Chicago, friends out in Seattle, friends in Pennsylvania, friends in New York. I mean, it's amazing when people come to Chicago and I get to see them for the first time. I pinch myself. I walked away from one of the Hounds games with this big stinking smile on my face, almost in tears, because I said, I'm where I want to be. I had so much damn fun doing what I do, and it's because of all the people. It's because of my partners. It's because of folks like you. So, yeah.
You want to go?
Man, that's going to be a hard one to top, buddy. You did really well last minute like that. I appreciate you. I'm going to say Andy Ramsey. Andy Ramsey, I was second, his right-hand man for about 5 years with Rainier Rugby youth program, pretty big. We run U12 on up to high school. And the guy is, I say it and I back it up, he's the nicest guy in rugby. He needed somebody like me that knows the word no and how to tell people no. And he's so passionate. He's so kind. He gives these kids that can't, play rugby. He gives them an opportunity to play rugby, and it changes a lot of kids' lives, and it gives them the respect and teachings of giving respect back and forth that they otherwise I don't think would have in other sport, in my personal opinion. And I'll just leave it at that. Mm-hmm. Andy Ramsey with Rainier Rugby.
Yeah. Another hard one to top. So I'm going to go with kind of a group of guys, but I'll call out, shout out one guy in particular is John Brooks. He's the president of Valley Kangaroos, who are in South King County, just south of Seattle here. And just one day I just moved into the neighborhood we live in now in Renton, and he's wearing a Seawolves jacket, and I say, "Hey man, go Seawolves," that sort of thing. And he's like, I'm the president of the Valley Kangaroos, and besides Matt, John Brooks is the other person who kind of showed me this whole other world of community rugby and community programs and stuff, and also Shadow, Tony, fantastic guy with another guy with Valley Kangaroos, and is a referee too. And just another guy is just solid. All those guys are solid. Valley Kangaroos. I was at their party the other night. It was just so much fun. So
funny enough, Rainier is the sister club, the youth club of Valley. So
that's pretty good. I love hearing about those stories. Now we've all, in one way or another, found this game in a place where it can be sometimes difficult to find or at least explain, but nevertheless, all good stories. So once again, gents, we got to do this again. This was so much fun. I enjoyed the shit out of this. Don't hesitate to give me a shout if you guys roll into town. We'll Chicago play host, that. But hopefully we'll be able to get together and share some stories and hoist a beverage over the course of 2024. So with that, I'm going to salute you guys. Seawall Podcast, check them out. The Rugby Rant Podcast will be back in January with new episodes as we lead up to the 2024 season. We look forward to it, getting back in the action. I'm going to try to do a couple of interviews over the course of the next few weeks to kind of whet everybody's appetite. I'm hoping to get Corey on, the head coach of the NOLA Gold, of course. And then I'm also looking to get some other folks from Chicago on. I really want to connect with Nick McCarthy. He's killing it with the USA Eagles, and I'm itching to see what he can do with the Chicago Hounds. So I'm looking to get a couple of those guys on. But if there's some folks that you want to hear from as fans that you want to get a run, pass, or kick interview with, throw me a line, throw me a thread, DM me, hit me up. If you have my digits, you can text me. I want to know who you guys want to hear from, because I enjoy doing the interviews. It's so much fun, and I enjoy bringing you some of the personalities of the MLR, because you know what we say at the Rugby Rant? We're trying to go rugby one fan at a time. And with that, thank you so much to you guys. I enjoyed it. Thank you to all those fans that were watching live. Check us out as we return in January, and check out the Seawall Podcast, because they're coming on and hitting it strong with community rugby and talk about the Seattle Seawolves. With that, we're going to sign off. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you at the next.